We bout to party. Unrestricted. Got the house now. We gon' turn it up, bring the house down. Got that bass space pumping, make them bounce now. Flossing like they bouncing and the freaks are coming out now.
AEW Unrestricted. Welcome in, folks. I'm Will Washington, along with the one and only Aubrey Edwards. Aubrey, how you doing?
I am fantastic. I am living the high that we had that was Double or Nothing. Holy crap. We returned back to MGM Grand after, 5 years now?
I mean, we had Dynamite there last year, which was my first experience at MGM Grand, but to do it...
We did, but to do the pay-per-view that literally changed all of our lives in the same building. I know AEW is still a young company, but we're full on nostalgia mode at this point, and I'm here for it. I'm riding this wave. I'm excited.
Yeah, and obviously the landscape of AEW has changed once again. We are back in a very familiar place. Look, I've attended all but 2 Double or Nothing. One of them I couldn't.
That's fair.
Because nobody could, except for you guys. But otherwise, as a follower of AEW, I always made it a point to either find my way to Vegas or the one in Jacksonville. And then this time around, the last 2 I've gotten to be a part of. And it is such a really special event to AEW to get to celebrate the history of AEW and to celebrate the fact that, again, this is the 5-year anniversary. It happened to fall right on the 5-year mark. And here we are again. It's really cool. And I'm glad that we got to do the show and do it our way once again.
Always. I love AEW. I mean, I know this is the official podcast and we're employees of the company, but it's really great working for a company that you love and you're excited about. And I legitimately get on planes every Tuesday and occasionally Fridays. And I'm just I am so stoked to be here. We're doing so many cool things. We have so many awesome people that we work with.
Yes, we do. And as a matter of fact, you were just telling me, speaking of excitement, that you were excited about things we had coming up on today's show. And what do we got coming up on today's show?
I am very excited to introduce our guest today, who some people have seen on their television screen. She does backstage stuff. She does ring announcing. She's running all over the place on TV Day. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Arkady Aura. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great.
Remind me again, how long have you been at AEW now? Because it feels like forever.
Tomorrow will be 3 months.
Whoa!
Yeah, very, very early stages still.
Very early, but very fast. Yes. And it already feels like you're a huge part of our locker room. I can speak to this. Will can't.
I can speak to some things. I see Arkady every week and we have great conversation. And right,
but you're locked in the creative office until the show starts. And then you're hey, say hi to everybody. So slightly different.
Okay? But she's met my kids. So you have that.
I have met your kids. I love your kids. They're very sweet.
Thank you.
Awesome. So you've been with AEW about 3 months now. How did that journey start? Because I think your first show was one of our Jacksonville shows.
Yeah.
Just take it away. How did you end up at AEW?
Well, I guess, it's interesting. So I'm going to go back to 8 years ago.
Perfect.
I had a tryout with WWE and I'll skip how I got there. But it happened very early in my wrestling career. It actually went well. Obviously, I didn't get the contract, but it's so funny. I remember crying and being so upset that it didn't happen, that I didn't get the contract. But I think one of the most important things that came out of it was I met Dax Harwood, because him and Cash Wheeler were my coaches for the tryout. And they were fantastic. Dax especially he's been just this, I won't say silent, but just this small encourager throughout my career. And he's been so, so wonderful. And so, I did the indie route after that tryout. I went to the Crash in Mexico. That was where I met the Young Bucks for the first time, which I'm sure they don't remember, but met them there. Did the whole 8-hour drive for $20, that whole hustle that you do on the indies. Left wrestling for about 5 years and then went back to SoCal Pro, where I had trained. This last summer, they invited me to come do backstage interviews there. And Jeff Dino, who runs it, was like, you got to do ring announcing. I was like, no way. I'm not a ring announcer. It's not going to happen. He encouraged me to try it. After the first one, nobody really knows this, but I reached out to WWE and I was like, hey guys, it's been 7 years, but I'm back in the game again. Immediately, they offered me an audition. And the next day, Dax Harwood reached out to me and was like, AEW might be interested. He's like, I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but anyways, it spiraled. He definitely got the ball rolling for me with AEW. And I'm so, so happy to be here.
He's got good brother energy.
Yeah, it was absolutely. Like, he just says these little things, like, if you want to make it happen, you're going to make it happen. Like, these little things, right? And then you're like, yes, I can. It's just so encouraging and positive. And Mike Mansouri's been kind of my main contact at AEW. He's the same thing. Like, I feel like there's these figures throughout my career that have just been so encouraging and believing in me and all these things. And I'm like so grateful for it. So,
well, it's interesting because, you've been backstage for a while and it was like little things here and there, but then it really just feels like in the last month or so, it went from probably like 15 to 100.
Yeah.
Now you're just kind of all over television. Talk about a little bit what that experience has been like so far.
It's interesting because for me, it feels like I think as far as the audience has gotten to see, I've been on TV more, right? But for me, like every week still feels like there's so much going on and there's so much I'm taking in every single day that I'm there because I am so new to this side of things. I've been slowly doing, as you know, Ring of Honor, ring announcing, working with Justin Roberts, who's just like phenomenal at what he does and so gracious to, help me and prepare me every week. It's been great getting to work with him and have him kind of as like a mentor there. So ring announcing was kind of the first thing that I have been doing here in AEW, and now getting to do backstage interviews, as you know, Will. I love doing it, and that's been really fun. I feel very calm, very prepped for backstage interviews, so that doesn't feel like as 0 to 100, I guess, for me. But the ring announcing every week feels like, I'm getting the hang of things. I'm still new, so picking up little things up every single time that I do it.
I feel like it's always easier to figure out, like, the more times you've done something, the more questions you need to ask. Oh, does this person have an entrance? Where are they from? Like, Are they coming out as a team? Are they coming out with individual entrances? Like, there's all these things that happen with ring announcing that people don't actually, like, it's not just standing there with a microphone. It's like, you have to actually prepare all the information that you're getting.
Yeah, ring announcing, same with reffing. I know, I've talked about this, but like, there's so much that I think people don't see. And going from indie ring announcing, which I had done 2 times before TV, is so different. Watching Justin Roberts do a full 2-hour show and then, Rampage afterwards. That first time that I watched it, I remember writing down in my notes all the questions I had for him. And he, again, so gracious to answer them all. But you're right. Like, I've been doing this for a while now. And I think I just asked him, like, am I supposed to announce and new when it's not an actual title match, right? Things like that, like little things that you don't notice that you only, or when I ran out with the belt, right? I hand you the belt and I see it happen every time. And I'm like, oh my God, wait, now I'm supposed to hand you the belt. These little things you don't know until you get the reps in.
So little backstory. I did a title match. I don't even know if it was a title match or an eliminator, but I basically, as soon as the bell rang, I walk over to the side and I'm motioning like the discount double check thing to Arkady.
And I'm like,
and he's like, me? I'm like, yes, please hand me the title. Like, please hand me the title now. And she's, oh God.
Yeah.
So like the next day that it happened, she sends me a text. She's like, I didn't forget this time.
But that's the thing, reps, and I'm 3 months in, so it's gonna take some reps.
Well, one of the days that you actually very much got reps that I don't think anybody was expecting was the May 8th edition of Dynamite. You had been doing Rampage here and there, but you hadn't quite moved to Dynamite yet. And then all of a sudden, Renee gets sick, and you went from kind of nothing on Dynamite to the entire show. What was that day like for you?
That day was so fun. Honestly, it was so much fun. And Renee is another one who, like, she's so incredible at what she does and so gracious with her knowledge. So even when I was doing ring announcing, I would follow her around a lot backstage.
That was how we first noticed you. We were like, hey, Renee has a new puppy kind of following her around. What's happening here?
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Renee, for letting me. But it's true. I was like, I'm here. I want to soak up as much as I can. Even if they have me doing ring announcing, I still want to learn the backstage stuff. So yeah, Renee is so amazing. She'll sit in on an interview or something, like now that I've done a couple, and she'll take a sentence and twist it in a way that I'm like, that makes it 100 times better, the question, right? Like, I don't know how she does it. Obviously, she's done a long time and she's incredible. But anyways, that Dynamite was so much fun. I had done Collision. That was actually, I think, my first time ever doing backstage because the beautiful Lexy couldn't make it. So I did Collision the week before. And then, yes, coming into that Dynamite, they're like, you're doing them all. And I loved it. You know, I told you, like, I have so much fun doing the backstage stuff.
We rode together to Dynamite that day,
Yes.
and we had a conversation beforehand of
Yes.
like, hey, everything's getting thrown to you today. So
Yeah.
be prepared.
And I was like, bring it on. I love it. No, and I think like, be prepared. That's one thing with the interviews that I like is you can do a lot of prep work. So I like to, if I know I'm doing that Dynamite, I'll look at everyone who's on the show, and that may not be who you're interviewing, but I'll look at everyone who's on the show. What were they doing last week? Who are they potentially facing this week? I will write it all down so that I at least know where we're at with the show. And then when, they come to me and they're like, you're doing an interview with Will Ospreay, then I'm like, okay, I know where he was. I know where he's going. I know where the story is. And you can kind of plug in the question a little bit easier. So I love that you can prep for backstage stuff in that way.
This is all fascinating. A lot of stuff that I've never even I should actually sit down and talk with you about this because it's like, oh, this is fascinating. I'm curious because you say figure out the question, you have the talent involved, sort of where their story is going. But another thing you have when you're doing an interview is we have a set timeline that we have to have this interview done. Mm-hmm. Total runtime for this is a minute because it needs to slot into this particular part of the show. So is there any sort of way that you approach what questions you're asking, knowing that you're under a tight time limit?
Definitely. It depends who it is and how much setup needs to go into it. There's certain things like the one with Adam Copeland on Dynamite, he was coming into it. There didn't need to be a lot of setup. I could kind of just ask him hey, what's going on tonight, whatever. And then there's other people where you do want to set up a longer question, but you don't want to take up too much of that time because they're the ones who need to shine in it. You don't need to get your anything in when you're asking a question. Even with ring announcing, I feel the same thing. Your whole job is to amplify the talent, the wrestlers. So yeah, I think there's a little bit of that trickiness. And that's one of the questions I ask Renee is how do you know when to elaborate on a question and also promote the events coming up and things like that? And when do you just kind of ask a simple question and let them take it away? A lot of learning as I go on the fly.
That's all of us though.
Yes. Well, this is all incredibly fascinating stuff. And I think a lot is going to be gained about the process to our viewers and our fans of AEW Unrestricted. And we've got a lot more to talk with Arkady about. And it's going to be right here when AEW Unrestricted continues. AEW Unrestricted. It's Will Washington, it's Aubrey Edwards, and we're joined by our guest, Arkady Aura. Arkady, I have a question to ask you. I'm sure you get asked this a lot. I think our fans need to know the exact answer. How tall are you?
No, they don't. They don't need to know. It's a mystery. Do they need to know?
One of the things that you provide to our audience that a lot of the all-time great interviewers, announcers, all over the years have provided was the ability to make our talent look like giants.
Yep.
That was the one thing Gene Okerlund was known for in particular, right? That Hulk Hogan was already a big guy, but he made Hulk Hogan look like the biggest guy on earth. I said all that to say that the first time I was completely sold on you on screen, it was you interviewing the Undisputed Kingdom. And they just looked like the biggest guys on earth simply by standing next to you on TV. And I thought, I am sold on Arkady. She needs to be on screen as often as possible. I won't make you reveal to the audience exactly how the magic is done there, but that is something that is underappreciated, no?
Thank you. I mean, I do think, I just want to say the Undisputed Kingdom guys are pretty darn big to begin with.
There you go.
However, right, when you're doing this, there's all these little things that you are hoping you can bring to the table that's different or unique or whatever, right? That's kind of what this business is finding ways that you stand out. Obviously, there's nothing I really need to do here to be worn this short. But I do think that's a lot of the comments. When I get a lot of comments on Twitter and in my DMs, they're like, how tall are you? I have to know how tall are you because are they really that tall? Are you that short? What's going on here? And you can find it. I'm sure it's online somewhere, but
I mean, look, there's that infamous shot of Tom Phillips in WWE doing the splits because he had to make sure that you don't want to look taller than your talent. And so it's a very important thing in pro wrestling. And that was one of those shots that's circulated all around the internet. And so when you're able to simply provide that to the talent, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, I think Orange Cassidy even said when I was back there, he's like, oh, you can wear your heels while you're back here talking to everyone. And I was like, yeah. Good.
Like I said, we talked about that May 8th edition of Dynamite, and you mentioned how, you opened the show with Adam Copeland, and then later on, I got to produce one with you with Willow Nightingale, and I was like, you know what she's never gotten to do before? The walk-on pop.
Yeah.
And for people who don't know what that is, that's where you start on the solo shot of our interviewer, and they say, please welcome our guest, insert person here, and then they walk on, and the crowd pops.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Arkady's never gotten to do that, and if there's ever a person who's guaranteed to get that pop, it's Willow Nightingale, and she did.
Yeah.
And so we did that one together. That was one of her better interviews, too. She's had some great interviews, but I really liked how that one went in general.
Yeah.
As a whole, that it felt like that day you got to get so much experience in. I feel like a lot of people take months, almost years to get.
I mean, that's another thing with AEW that's so fun, I think, is like, and I think Dax had kind of said this when I had first called him and starting here. He's like, it can be like a sink or swim environment. You can get these opportunities that are really big that would take a lot of time other places to get. With the interviews, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is so new to me, even having done them a bit on the indies. And I will say, when I wrestled, every place I wrestled would try and be like, you should do backstage interview. They would always try and like push me in there. And when I was wrestling, all I wanted to do was wrestle, right? I was like, I'm not a backstage interviewer, whatever. But now, I mean, I'm so grateful. I mean, I tell Mansouri or whoever is, I'm like, if you have anything for me backstage, I'd love to give it a shot, because I do think that's the only way you can really get reps in. And I'm at home and I practice a lot. I'll set up my phone, write out all the champions, practice asking them questions to get reps in. But there's nothing like being in that environment where the camera's on you, there's all the people producing in the room, and they say go. You can only get that by doing it. You can only get that feeling, that experience by doing it. So I was so grateful for that day to have so many opportunities to get that rep in.
Speaking of which, and Will had kind of alluded to this interview too. So one of my favorite moments was when like the Undisputed Kingdom called you not Lexy.
Yeah. I don't know these guys.
Who? What? So it's like, obviously, if you're practicing at home, you're not going to have like the call and response that happens with this sort of thing. How do you keep a straight face when that sort of stuff happens?
It's a little bit, well, with those guys, they're pretty funny. There is always a little bit of that, like if somebody's calling you not Lexy, not Renee, you're like, hey, I think some of that reaction is natural when you're in the environment. And I think that's part of what makes people great at it is, with any sports interview, I watch a lot of NHL, NFL, all those things. You watch those interviews, you really are reacting in the moment, right? Like you're not practicing reactions. Like at home, you're kind of going through it. But when you're in that environment, you have to react as naturally as possible. So someone calls me not Lexy, it's like, how would you really react to that, right? That's another really fun thing with interviews that you bring up is you get to have that rapport with certain talent. When you're ring announcing, you're memorizing hometowns and weights, and you're announcing, you get to watch the whole show. But when you're in the backstage area, you get to know the talent better, and you get to have those relationships and have fun and have little rivalries and all that. You get to create more of that, those fun interactions with wrestlers that you don't get when you're in the ring,
Rapport, I think is the word you were trying to find.
Yeah. Rapport.
And so you did have the following week, what was really one of the strongest interviews I think we've had in recent months between Roderick Strong and Will Ospreay.
Yeah.
Yes.
That ended up being a really incredible moment for both guys, I think, and really got to tell an emotional story, and you got to be right there in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about kind of how that all came together and essentially getting to be a part of that moment.
I was backstage getting ready for ring announcing, and Tony Schiavone texted me, and he's like, hey, you're doing a backstage segment. And Renee, as I found out with you, Renee was doing a segment in the ring. She was doing the contract signing.
It was a domino effect.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a domino effect.
Because originally Tony Schiavone was going to be doing the contract signing between Mercedes and Willow. It was one of those things, like, as we're doing it, I was like, I feel like Renee's right for this. Mm-hmm. And so we pulled Renee into the contract signing, but then it was like, but she had the previous segment, which was going to be the interview between Roddy and Will Ospreay.
Can't be in two places at once.
Yeah, can't be in two places at once.
I know. And I'm so grateful that you guys thought of me, because that interview was electric. And there's certain times when you're doing them, and as you know, when you're back there, sometimes you have to do multiple takes if it's not a live interview. And this was like one-hit wonder. I mean, these guys had a lot of emotion between them, and their rivalry dates back, right? So I think they were able to like really bring that into the promo. And that was another one where you're really reacting on the fly because you've got two big dudes yelling in front of you and letting out all this aggression, and they've got a big match coming up. So I feel like that was a very special one to get to be a part of. And yeah, I was happy that people thought it went well and enjoyed the interview. And again, I'm just like the smallest part of it. Like they need to shine. So it's like finding ways to like get out of it too, so that you're not sitting there like, you know, like, oh my God, is that really going to happen? But you got to find your stride in it and then let them shine.
So I'm curious because you have kind of the interesting story, and you've alluded to this, is that when you were wrestling, you're like, I want to be a wrestler, even though everyone's saying you need to be a ring announcer. What got you into wrestling in the first place?
I didn't grow up watching it. I was always very theatrical. Like I thought for sure I'd go into like movies, TV, theater. I did musical theater growing up. And then I found sports. I've always loved sports. I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I started watching Total Divas, Tough Enough, shows like that. AEW wasn't around at the time. I'm sure I would have been watching it if it was. But I was watching those shows and I was like, I could do this. I can play sports. I can act. Put me in. I reached out to, I believe it was Cassie Lee. I was Googling, like, how do you start wrestling? And I reached out to her on Instagram or something. And she's like, just put in an application at WWE. Just go for it. I did. And it was truly like, I think I put in the application in like November. They invited me to an event in February. And then I had my tryout a month later with WWE. So it spiraled fast. And then after that moment, I was so aware of how lucky I was to be in that position and get there so fast. And so I made sure to do everything I could, especially after that tryout, to learn everything I could about the business. Cause like I said, I didn't grow up watching it, learn the terminology, different. It's been going on for so long. There's so much to learn, but it was a whirlwind. I don't know. I was like, I'll go for this. And it spiraled really fast.
Talk about the training experience and exactly what that was like.
Well, it was hard. Okay. It's really hard. There's a reason I'm not wrestling. It was naively, I thought I could do this. I couldn't do it. It's a really tough process. Just the cardio alone, wrestling cardio, is different than any cardio anyone's ever done in their whole life. I'm sorry, but it's like the hardest thing ever.
You can't recreate it.
Yeah. And for me, at least when I started, so this is like 2015, 2016, there weren't a ton of females in the space. So when I was going to wrestling schools, it was always wrestling with the boys. Again, I'm a pretty small person. So like doing, trying to put on like matches in the ring with these dudes who are 6 feet tall and 200 whatever pounds, like it was rough. It took a toll on my body. I definitely don't have enough aggression as a human being to make
It's not really a word I associate with you.
No, they were always like, you're too smiley, you're too happy, you're like bouncing around the place. So anyways, the training was really tough. I'm so grateful that I tried it because I know it's not for me. And I know I'm in my lane now, and I'm very happy in my lane.
This is such a fantastic conversation. We have more to talk about with Arkady. Get to learn more about her amazingness, both in and out of the ring, coming up on AEW Unrestricted. AEW Unrestricted, Aubrey Edwards, Will Washington, with our wonderful guest today, Arkady Aura. She's backstage interviewer, she's ring announcer, she's doing a bunch of stuff at AEW in the 3 months she's been with us, and she's absolutely incredible and wonderful and amazing. We've talked about a lot of stuff so far, and you've been like little hints of things have popped up, and like we got to talk about this like Highland Games thing, because I think the first time I followed you on Instagram, like you're there in this like skirt lifting a freaking log over your head, and I'm like, I have no idea what this is. So like explain a little bit what it is and how you
and the rest of the world,
right? I was like, I know I'm doing like weird oyster farming stuff on my Instagram, but this is something crazy. So tell us a little bit about what it is and how you got into it.
I think the best way to describe it is like a Scottish strongman. It's very unique. Like nobody's heard of it. Like you said, my husband and I, we own a gym. We had some people who were in the Highland Games come in and train there. So we started practicing with them. My husband and I, we had done like powerlifting and other sports together, which we really enjoy. We both like being physical. And so when we started practicing, we thought this is a good way that we can travel with our family, do these fun games, be active, whatever. So we ended up falling in love with the sport. Yeah, we're tossing, it's called a caber toss. You're tossing like telephone poles, basically. You're throwing weights across the field. You wear a kilt because it's a traditional Scottish sport. It's so much fun. I love doing it. It's hard to do that and train at the level that I would want to be at while doing this. Very different goals, very different, last year was the best year I'd ever had in Highland Games. And I spent all year training very hard to make it to nationals, my lightweight nationals competition. And this year, I'd be lucky if I break the top 20,
It's a little bit harder when you're on the road 200 days a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have not figured out that schedule yet, but it's really fun. I love the Highland Games. It's been a blast.
That already just sounds exhausting, but also in a really cool, fun way. So
yeah,
you mentioned you and your husband own a gym?
We do. It's called Ironmonger's Gym. Yeah, I mean, that's his baby. He's been doing that the last 10 plus years now. We live in San Diego, and it's powerlifting, strongman specific, but I mean, we have people from all different walks of life in there.
I mean, owning a gym is really freaking hard. It's a difficult business to have success in.
Yep.
So the fact that you've got that going on with
10
everything
years
else.
at that.
Yeah, 10 years is wild, right?
Yeah.
That's insane. Also, when we're eventually in San Diego again, we're all going to have to hit you up, and Swole Patrol is going to have to take a stop down at the the Ironmonger's Gym. I'm excited.
But that's not the only thing you've been doing for 10 years, by the way.
Yes.
I just wanted to make that note because you also have a 10-year-old son.
I do. Yes.
Wild.
He's bigger than me.
Well, we still don't know how tall you are, so.
But knowing how tall you are doesn't surprise me because, again, you've met both my kids, and my 13-year-old, I think, has 2 inches on you. And so, 10-year-old son. So I obviously... We talk kids every once in a while, but for the audience who gets to kind of hear of your pride and joy a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously my family is everything. And I just actually want to touch on something since we're talking about AEW.
Sure.
That was a huge, huge factor in coming to AEW and having a family. When I was doing this 7-8 years ago, there were a lot of people that had been in the business that were you've got to be willing to give up your family for this. You have to be willing to, sleep on a couch away from them for 2 years, all this stuff to their point. Yes, that has some merit. However, I'm never going to give up my family. My family is absolutely everything to me. So that mindset was a little bit hard for me to get behind. And when I started talking to people about possibly coming to AEW, the amount of people within the company that talked so positively about Tony Khan, how much they loved him as a boss and how family oriented he was and how family oriented the place is, and that you can do it all. You can be a mom, you can be on the road, you can have this job. That was really encouraging to me. So, I mean, that was a huge factor, and it still is a huge factor why I love AEW. And I'm so grateful for the space and the environment they created for people to have families and do this, because it is tough. It's an adjustment. And it was definitely a bit of an adjustment for him to not have mom home every night of the week like he's had forever. I think too, it's really cool. He gets to see me doing this and pursuing what I love, and his dad building a business and doing what he loves. And we're so encouraging of him to do whatever he wants, which is football, which is why he thinks Tony Khan is the coolest person in AEW. Because of the Jaguars.
Right.
If I asked him who he's the most excited to meet, he likes wrestling. He's into it, but he's next level into football. So that's his realm.
We're going to get that kid meeting Trevor Lawrence one day. Just make it happen.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, he's a Bears fan, but I mean, anything football related.
We don't say that here. We don't say that here.
Nah, they're not in the AFC South, so that's fine.
That's fine. That's fine.
You mentioned another AFC South team, and then it's
yeah, if you said your kid was a Colts fan, we'd have a problem. We'd end this interview right now.
No, we're good there.
We're good. Whew. Okay. Whew. So I'm curious, and maybe this is just me as the child-free person on the call. What's been the biggest change adjusting as a mother to someone who is, as you said, being able there to, see your kid every day to suddenly you're on the road all the time?
Yeah. Coming into it now when he's 10 years old is the best. Again, I look back and I was so sad that I didn't get that WWE tryout 8 years ago. And I genuinely go, would I have been able to make it though with a 2-year-old at the time? That was incredibly difficult. Just going to the tryout alone was difficult. And I go, he's 10 years old now. I can FaceTime with him. I call him. He's excited. He can watch the show, which he does, and then he'll text me a million questions about it. I think we've all, it's only 3 months in, but I think we've all kind of got used to the schedule a bit more. And I actually think it's harder for like my husband, right? Because he's not the one on the road. Dude, my day is, you guys know, the day is busy. The travel, it's long. I mean, it's long, but it's busy. The hardest thing always is like at night when you're not there to like give him a kiss and say goodnight. But, again, he's 10. And so this is, I think, the most perfect time for me to be in the business. And I think everything worked out perfectly the way it's supposed to. It's been an adjustment, but it hasn't been that crazy. And I get to be home Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. I don't have to go anywhere on those days. I can pick him up from school, drop him off at school, and spend the weekend. So hasn't been too bad.
It really is an incredible family-oriented experience. I can definitely speak to that.
Yeah.
If you have kids that even remotely enjoy wrestling, bringing them to work is like always the most fun thing on earth. So
they're going to come this next week. This will be their first time coming. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, it's exciting. Especially, as we start to do more of this West Coast stuff, that's going to be cake for you. What I wanted to ask you about, speaking of the West Coast and old Southern California, a place that wrestling fans really got to know you was SoCal Pro Wrestling,
yes,
where you were a ring announcer and backstage interviewer and really got to cut your teeth at this. And so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, SoCal Pro Wrestling, I will forever be grateful. Jeff Dino and Jonathan, like, they gave me a lot of space to... And when you're on the indies, again, you don't have a lot of people producing you and telling you what you have to do and where you need to be, right? So you have a lot of freedom in creating those backstage interviews. And I mean, again, Jeff asked me so many times, he's like, we got to get you in the ring announcing. And I think just him pushing me, well, the ring announcer wasn't able to make it. So I kind of had to go out there and do it, but him encouraging me, all the guys that wrestle there, Judiz, there's so many of them who were always very positive and encouraging. And again, it can be a very cutthroat business. When I did get the call to AEW, of course, you see these, and it's different because I'm not wrestling, right? So I'm not going up against people who are trying to wrestle there, but just, they all reached out. They all were saying how proud they were. And that environment that SoCal Pro has created, it's very family oriented. It feels like family between all of us. I mean, being on the indies, you get a chance to figure out who you are and create who you are without really any outside noise, So I think being at SoCal Pro gave me that chance to figure out what I like to do. And I love doing the backstage interviews. So they would tell me who they wanted me to interview, and then I had free reign on how I wanted it to go for the most part. Ring announcing, they were just go out there and have fun, say whatever you want, have fun. They were so great about it. So forever grateful. If anyone lives in the Southern California area and you're looking for a place to train, SoCal Pro is your place.
So started in wrestling, really enjoyed backstage interviewing, resisted being a ring announcer, eventually did ring announcing, but you were also a manager at one point.
Yeah, actually that was a big part of my indies.
Right? Like, and you managed Brian Cage of all people.
That was a new thing. So like when I think I'd met Brian at the Crash back in 2016, 2017. And when I was at the Crash, they had brought me in to host and do backstage stuff. Again, I was like, I want to train. And they started having me valet there and do managing. So I managed there for probably like 6 or 7 months, which was an incredible experience because the Crash is huge. They've got like 10,000 fans every time. So you're going out there to all these fans. And I was with like the most hated wrestlers out there. So you're getting stuff thrown at you. You're getting called every name in the book. It was rough, but a great environment to learn in. And then right before AEW, had me come out for a tryout, Brian Cage was going back to the Crash and asked me if I wanted to come out and manage him. And that was fun. That was a fun experience. Again, just kind of like reps in front of a crowd, being out there. Couldn't have asked for more. So it was a fun little return to the Crash.
I think the lesson here that I've taken away from kind of everything we've talked about on the show is reps, right? That ultimately there's nothing more you can ask for in terms of being an on-screen presence in professional wrestling than the reps. Yeah.
And also I think too, just being open to everything. Like, even though I say I resisted ring announcing, I think in reality, he maybe asked me like once or twice and I was nervous, but throughout this whole process, I've always trusted if somebody's going to trust me with a mic and ask me to go out there and do it, I'm like, sure, I'll try anything. I'll be anywhere. And I think that's kind of, I say this too to some of the guys at SoCal Pro, if they've asked, like, how do you do this? I'm like, just put yourself out there. Like, don't expect anyone to give you anything or ask for anything. Like, go out there, put yourself out there. Again, record yourself at home. I was making really embarrassing YouTube videos, trying to just like get reps in of talking in front of a screen and just being open to it. Yeah. Like a promoter asks you to go out there and ring an ounce or to go out there and manage somebody, like, I'm your girl. Put me in.
Will's talking about what he got out of this, but what I'm got out of this is you have no idea when the opportunities come around, and you just got to be willing to try anything.
Yeah.
And with that willingness and that desire to learn different things and to really hit it out of the park in whatever you're doing, I think you'll just naturally find success.
Thank you. I want to say something too. I know we're wrapping up. I want to say something to both of you guys, because I feel like the environment at AEW has been so incredible. And both of you guys don't know this, but when I was thinking about coming on the podcast today, I was thinking how each of you have done something small in these 3 months that have made such an impact to me. And that is when I was ring announcing one time, Aubrey, I don't even know if you remember this, but I was so nervous. You were in the ring and you leaned over to me after I did it. And you were like, that was great. You sounded amazing. You said something so positive and encouraging. And I just remember that gave me confidence throughout the rest of the night. And it was probably one of my better nights. And Will, you took the time to message me after doing those interviews and said that you thought they went great. And just like those little things, I think, again, the environment that AEW creates where people are so positive and encouraging and wanting each other to succeed. And we're all in different avenues. And yet the fact that both of you take time to do stuff like that, it's just, again, speaks to what a great environment it's been. And thank you both for making me feel so comfortable there all the time.
Make me cry.
Thank you, Arkady. And thank you for taking the time to do this interview with us on Unrestricted. And you can follow Arkady Aura on her Instagram and Twitter at Arkady with 2 T's and 2 Y's. It's basically spelled nowhere like her actual name is.
Not confusing at all.
It is closer to how it's pronounced, I suppose.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
That should help the pronunciation, because I know a lot of people walk up to you and like, what's up, Arkady? Yeah. And it's like, no, that's
Arkady was just a nickname forever. And of course, I made an Instagram, 15 years ago and used it. But
here we are.
Here we are.
And of course, you can listen to and follow this podcast, AEW Unrestricted, at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And you can check out video episodes on our YouTube channel every Monday at AEW Unrestricted, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. AEW Dynamite is every Wednesday on TBS. AEW Rampage is every Friday on TNT. AEW Collision every Saturday on TNT. Plus, we've got Ring of Honor streaming every Thursday on Honor Club. I'm Will Washington. She's Aubrey Edwards. Our guest was Arkady Aura. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Peace.
Yay!
Come on, throw your hands up, let me see you. Unrestricted, got the house now. We gon' turn it up, bring the house down. Got that big space pumping, make them bounce now. Flossing like they bouncing in the